Here we go again. Okay, here we are back. Hope you had a good lunch. That was pretty intense earlier, so thanks for everyone for getting involved in that. The next session's kind of moving away from talking about funding, probably, I think, mainly, and starting to talk about creative production and the kind of the artists and the ideas a bit more. There's 4 of us who are going to do kind of quick 5-10 minute talks about the tours we've produced as part of Outlands, and Sophie is going to talk about a project outside Outlands. Just before we start that, someone just asked me at lunch if we could just do a quick show of hands to kind of get an idea of who's in the room today, which I think is a really good idea. So can you just put your hands up if you're an independent artist? Right, wow, yeah, great. More than I realised would be here. That's really good. Independent producers? Okay. Any venue people? Yep. Funders? Any left in the room after the last session? Yes. 1, good luck. MPO types? Yep. Small MPO. There's variety. Academics? Okay. No. Anyone else that I've not mentioned that feels like they should say, yeah. Writers, some writers in. Promoters, of course, promoters, yeah. Festivals, record labels. Non-MPO organisations. Cool, all right. Well, hopefully this section will be interesting to all of you in some way, I hope. So I'm just going to hand over to Al, who's going to give the first presentation. Again, it will just take a second to swap laptops over.
Okay, great. So hello again. My name's Al Cameron again. I'm going to talk to you about this. This is the poster for, I think it was the 4th Outlands tour that happened in February of 2019. It had actually had a much longer sort of lead-in time than that, and it went through a number of different sort of ideas before we finally settled on this tour. But Ecstatic Material was essentially a sort of title that I sort of came up with Jen Allen, who's here and going to be your host later for the quiz. And we sort of decided to collaborate on this project, which we first actually thought might be an exhibition or a mix of exhibitions and music and all sorts of things. And I guess we were kind of interested loosely. I don't want to go into it for too long, but this kind of idea of sort of contemporary and historical ways in which thinking about sort of sound and sort of the vibrational cosmos and then material and how these two things might come together at quite a sort of simple conceptual level to do some interesting things and be an interesting way to look at a whole different bunch of things. But I'll move on to the next slide, in fact. Oh, is that working? Oh, it's not working now. How do I do that then? Oh, I have to go and click on here, right? Yeah, that should work now. There you go. So one of the people we were really interested in working with was this guy up in the corner, Keith Harrison, he's a visual artist mainly, but he sculpts a lot. He uses a lot of heavy materials. He makes a lot of big installations, and he works a lot with things like clay. And we obviously thought Ecstatic Material. Really interesting about him, and you can see some examples here, is where he's kind of using ceramics and clay making, but in the context of sound work. So he was someone that we, from the start, were agreed that we really wanted to work with. And this picture down in the bottom left-hand corner is of a performance that he actually gave at Warr Pavilion with the band, the kind of grindcore band Napalm Death, where he basically built this sound system in the shape of Bustle Home, this housing estate, which they'd both grown up on. And the idea was that Napalm Death were going to play through this sound system that Keith had built and sort of destroy it. So this was a sort of piece that was really kind of crucial for us. But it was also because Caleb had actually been the producer of this piece at Warr, that we somehow came together with Keith and Caleb and got invited into doing it into the Outlands network. So that's how it came about being an Outlands tour. And obviously then we changed our ideas from being an exhibition with a lot of different people involved and a lot of different elements to thinking how can we make this one production which is kind of going to tour around. And at this point, essentially, we decided, talking to Keith a lot, we were kind of interested in these kind of big sound systems that he was building, these kind of big weighty things. And he was quite interested in working with a musician specifically, so he wasn't going to be making his own music. So we decided to invite Beatrice Dillon, who's an electronic musician, to collaborate with Keith. And then we thought like we're going to go round to these 8 or 9 different venues, including a London show, and we're going to sort of do them night on night in a van, and it's going to have this kind of sound system, old school sound system touring element to it, where we're going to load everything out of a van and set it up and do it in all of these different venues. And it, what was really nice, because sometimes when you bring together 2 different artists to collaborate, you never know how it's going to go and whether they're going to get on personally and all of these kinds of things. But this collaboration actually turned out to be really good, because Beatrice, I suppose, comes from an art background and she trained as an artist, and Keith's got a massive interest in music, and somehow it felt like the project. Sometimes you could have a thing where it's like someone's going to build this kind of visual art component, this sculpture, and someone's going to make the music, and then you're going to bring them together at the last minute and they're going to rehearse, and then they're going to do their own 2 separate things on the same stage. And this didn't feel like that at all. Actually, it was amazing how much time they wanted to put into actually developing it together. So I'm just going to show you some of. There's the 2 of them, and this is a kind of background which is kind of supposed to be like almost like a sound wave in the air. This is kind of some of the. I just thought it might be interesting to show you sort of some of the kind of shared interests that we had around. There was quite a lot of time that was just spent like looking at other people's work and thinking how it would develop, and it moved from being this kind of weighty sort of interest in kind of sound systems and heavy clay to moving into something that felt much more colourful, and sort of using light materials and much more plastic. And this is like a Donald Judd sculpture, and all of these different sort of influences started coming in. And at one point there was a funny moment where like we came up with a tagline for the work, and it had moved a lot from being this kind of avant-garde interest in materials and sound to an idea of Donald Judd in IKEA on mushrooms was the term that we used. So this again, like moving from like this kind of big sound system aesthetic into a kind of using like plastic ready-made crates, and this was partly like conceptually interesting to kind of think about how you could reconsider what a sound system was, and it was partly practical because we had to basically load this thing in and out of a different size venue every night, and so there were a lot of pragmatics of touring involved in the decisions, and then there was a lot of work done by, I think Keith does all these really great sort of preparatory drawings, so I'm just going to show you some of these here, and this was an early mock-up of what he thought it might look like, with this kind of idea that sound was going to be pumping all of this Play-Doh out the side of a weird speaker stack. And then it's like lots of getting into sort of more detail. This was all kind of devised around using the different color schemes of sort of electricity switching boards. And then finally getting to like really kind of more detailed design. And what it ended up being was a whole bunch of different stacks of plastic crates. Each one had a sort of car speaker built into the top. Different sizes from subs to mids to tops, and then breaking down the elements of Play-Doh and having different elements, so like creme de tartare, salt, glycerin, and all of these different things. So a finished work which sort of, this is all shots from Cast where they set up and they did about a month sort of R&D together, and they put a lot of time into all of it. So you ended up with like 15 of these weird sound system stacks. And then there was a surround sound, 7.1 surround system, and Beatrice was feeding different sounds into all of these stacks and into the system going round. And then they were quite interested in developing this kind of idea of like the back end of a kind of distribution warehouse or something. So we had all these working lights going on there as well. And then this is kind of what was going on in the top of the stacks. So essentially, the sound was having this direct impact on these different materials that were getting put into the top, into these speakers, which were almost acting like bowls, and you were kind of getting into these kind of cymatic patterns and so on that were going on. And then we had these kind of hangings. So this is the Manchester show, and then you sort of get into how it went on the tour itself. It was a really weird one because the whole thing was. It was like a live installation. It wasn't like a concert, and we had like a lot of issues on the opening nights of like, what are people going to do? The first night in Plymouth, everyone thought it was like an art opening, and they just went around chatting, and no one could even hear the music. And then at other ones, like the second night in Bristol, like everyone just stood right at the back and didn't get near it. So then we had to sort of try and change the show halfway through and try and turn it into more of a show and work out how to get people to actually get involved. And this was from Manchester, where someone sort of said to me, oh, this is really interesting because you've put the audience in a really difficult position to know where to look and what to do. And you've got these bright lights shining in their faces. And they thought it was a deliberate tactic, but it wasn't really. It was just something that kind of came up. So Beatrice was out the side essentially playing. But you did get it was a really interesting thing to tour because you got sometimes you got people hanging back, and then by the end, like this was at Warr, you had a lot of people just going around shoving their hands into the speaker cones and stuff like that. So you never quite knew what they were gonna do, which was fun in a way, and we just had to accept that was going to be part of it and make the most of it. And the other thing about it, I think, that I don't know if I felt comfortable or not with, was that there was so many people taking photos. So it was one of those kind of Instagram shows where you almost wonder whether people are just kind of, it's going to have a life on Instagram rather than a live thing. And then also as part of Outlands, we got some Bristol guys called Copper Sounds who, again, they do use a lot of materials, but with vinyl decks. Like they use things like clay and copper, and they came and did a workshop where everyone had to basically cut their own wax disc, which seemed to be really popular and people really enjoyed it. And everyone basically made a wax 7-inch and made their own sleeve. And then they also performed on the evening. So we sort of had two halves. One was very kind of like dense, heavy, kind of almost industrial, and the other one was very plastic and light-hearted. And this was Copper Sound set up. The only other thing I was going to say was I thought I'd show this picture because you've got the van over there. We had to unload and load that van every night for 9 nights with all of this stuff. And it could have been a complete nightmare. I can remember after the first night just thinking, like, this is going to be the worst thing I've ever done. Like, all of these things covered in glycerin and flour and salt. But it was... we did have to act like a sound system crew, and everyone had to muck in, including Beatrice and Keith, and like we were all just putting speakers in and out of a van for 9 days. But it all seemed to go right. And the funny moment was when we were sat in the car driving Keith along, and he was like, "I really hope this holiday never ends." And it made us wonder what kind of holidays he goes on. There's 9 nights in a row, yeah. But we felt we could do more, funnily enough, which was the last thing we imagined.
I thought that was going to be a good idea, like from a practical perspective, because we had 2 artists, and there's all of us with different schedules, and we're never going to get this done unless we just do it, block it out. Yeah. We're like, yeah, it's going to be brilliant. And then after the first night, we realised we were installing and deinstalling an artwork every night.
And that's the whole team looking really happy on the last night. So, but I did enjoy it because actually everyone felt equal, and we all did the same work throughout the tour. And thankfully we're working with artists who were really, really invested in this project and willing to actually do a bit more and act as their own roadies and all of that, which is what it needed.
And sorry to ask again, what was I'm sort of quietly self-evident because I'm working in the most snow that's found in England. But what was the in Berwick, and what was the longest length of journey between these?
Was it Birmingham to here?
It was quite well routed, but we went up north, and then there was one journey which was about kind of 4 or 5 hours. Like actually I think it was down to the I can't remember. Yeah.
There was one. We did it we basically planned it out, so we did a loop basically of the venue, and the longest one was about 4 hours.
And just to finish up, it was one nice thing was that we got, you know, the Guardian gave us a 4-star review, and thankfully it wasn't like a 2-star or something like that, because halfway through a tour, it's the last thing you'd need. So that was one little bonus. And if anyone is going out to Borealis Festival in March, then, you know, we're going to have one last hurrah with it out there, and we're going to do a few shows over the week. So it's got a sort of afterlife that's still going on.
Do you have any data on who came, like who the live audience was, and how they kind of felt about it?
Yeah, I mean, Outlands, you know, a big part of Outlands is to try and collect that data. So it's like a massive part of what the funding's for. But you know, I haven't prepared that so much. I mean, you know, because of the way the show worked, we had to sort of really be there actually in the middle of the show and almost try and act like audience members and encourage people to like, come on, you've got to walk in here. So we were looking at around at people and chatting to them a lot during the shows.
We noticed that it was one of the things that we actually hadn't really thought that much about, but because it was such a sort of sensory thing, it was like totally all ages, and especially at the Delaware show, it was really interesting to see the way audiences engaged with it, but that everyone was engaging with it, and that sounds like this really dreamy, like perfect thing, but I really loved that about the show, that it was amazing for kids, and amazing for like the sort of 20-something art student, and amazing for like the sort of 50 plus, you know, usually goes to a rock gig thing. It all seemed to work, so it was so sensory. That was a total accident, I think.
Yeah, like at the Birmingham show, like Nick Bullen came along from Napalm Death, and he really enjoyed it, and he's obviously like Keith Harrison's complete idol. So, you know, it did seem to have like it seemed to work at different levels depending like what your sort of knowledge and interests were.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Al. That was great.
Right. Is this mic on? Is it coming through? Cool. Okay, my name's Sophie Cooper, and I'm going to present Tour Talk. I'm going to do a quick run through of like the last 7 years of me and my partner Jake Blanchard running tour festival and tour bookings and loads of other things with the word tour in front of it. Right, let's crack on. So the first one is, I met Jake in about 2012 or something in that London, did my time down there. And he had a label called Tour Press, which was like a zine label. He put out tapes, put out CDRs and all that. So that's where the word comes from. But tour means, he's from Derbyshire, so there's lots of tours there. I think it's like a mound on top of a hill. That's a tour, in case you're interested. So we moved to Todmorden. I don't remember, neither of us can actually recall the moment we were like, let's move to Todmorden, but we found ourselves there. And it's a beautiful town, just sort of slap bang between Manchester and Leeds. Very beautiful valley, visit Todd. And very quickly, I met my friend here, Matany, Nila Voski, aka Gig. Everyone calls her Gig. And she's a lady there on the left. She had a venue called the Three Wise Monkeys. And I had a load of clothes when I first moved to Todmorden. And I said to Gig, I was like, what can I do with them? So we arranged clothes swaps. That's what we first started doing. Gave all the money to Wolf Music, if anyone's been there. Anyway, so there you go. And then, yeah, so we did these clothes swaps. This is her old venue. I thought it's quite funny here, actually. She's obviously been pissed off with somebody because she's written, in the future, we will keep the noise down and all our customers will remain quiet and polite. Ha, 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 ha. I don't know. There was obviously something going on with it that day. So anyway, we did that. And then eventually met someone called Mary Clear, who gave me the keys to this monster, the Todmorden Unitarian Church. And I was like, let's put some gigs on. So this was the first gig we did. I'm from Stoke-on-Trent, so I invited some friends from Stoke to come and perform. And this is Jake's artwork. I didn't mention, actually, he's a professional illustrator as well. So we kind of had this, because I can say it because he's not here, but like the branding's really strong, I think. So Jake went all out on artwork like quite early on. So these are some of the first gigs we first put on. Yeah. Oh, hang on, this one does something. Look. Hey. That's my old plumage. When I was going through all these like flyers, actually, I realised that we were putting more descriptions on in the earlier days. So I guess we were trying to work out who the audience was in Todd. So yeah, that's another conversation perhaps. So one thing led to another, and we organised Tour Festival, which is our first one. This is inside the Unitarian Church. I've got some better pictures coming up, but that's a psychedelic oil 70s light show thing my friend Wacker did. And we did it across 3 venues, all named there. So it was a real experiment, and it was really good. I loved it. So here's some shots from, we had the Quali party down from Bradford with Chris Ladowski there. That's Gig's Noise Dungeon, that's what I called it. It was like downstairs at Three Wise Monkeys. So, yeah, that's quite interesting. Every time they pulled a pint, actually, you could hear, like, in the background, so it added to the atmosphere. Jen, you wrote about us in The Guardian, so that was cool. And we were all very excited about that. And so was Alison O'Donnell from United Bible Studies. There she is in the pulpit. Here's some more pictures of the Psychedelic Light Show. I've got Ernesto Gonzalez there, and Lobster Priest, who I like a lot. So there you go, you get the idea. Right, so time moved on. And Gig acquired this place called the Golden Lion. Big venue. It's got like upstairs, downstairs. It's got a hotel in it as well. You can stop there as well. 25 quid a night. And she acquired this man, Richard Walker. This is Gig's weird like cult church event. Everyone got married that night. It was very nice. And me and Jake and our friend Ned put together Tourist Das, which was a collaboration between Tour Festival and Vassis Das. So this one was a bit more, kind of went for it a bit more of this one. And we did 3 days with an opening night at the Golden Lion. Here's a picture from the Golden Lion from upstairs. Bongaleros, great show. Again, supporting my Stokey crew. That was good. And, oh yeah, Gig's Hotel. So that's like, in the venue, there's old Ned DJing at the back. Sorry if you slept in that room. And so here's some pictures from the show. Here's Richard Dawson. Always welcome back in Todd is Richard. Oh yeah, and then this guy. So we had Maniac. I spoke to my friend Andrew Lyles from Nurse with Wound, and I was like, can you play the festival? He said, yeah, if you pay for my mate to come over from Norway. And it turned out it was Maniac from black metal band Mayhem. But it turned out Sven was really nice, and we all had pictures with him at the end of the night, so that was good. No empty bottle of whiskey, bless him. Anyway, time moved on. We met some other people putting on gigs. Inkvote, who I put this one in actually as an example of something we got wrong, because they Inkvote like program a sort of weekend thing, and they're into like chill out music, electronica. That's what you were saying. And then we decided to put on some super high-end major trebly like noise music. Didn't get invited back. And then I got a dog, Dana. This is my dog, Dana. So we included her in the branding of the festival, which is really cool. And that's Jake, actually. I've not had a picture yet. And this kind of smash and grab. So smash and grab and a load of like heavy drinking bong fans paid for this festival pretty much through buying that can. So that was really good, running the bar. And I put Ignatz on, which was really great. I love Ignatz. Anyway, oops, missed one. Oh yeah, and then very shortly after, I convinced a guy who was putting on Pelt in London to let us do it in Todmorden. And it took like a lot of convincing, but Pelt was like one of mine and Jake's like dream. We'd want to put this band on, so we managed to do it with 2 weeks. So we promoted that sold out show because it's Pelt. We love them. Then we started doing afternoon gigs. So this was like the first afternoon gig we put on upstairs at the Golden Lion, which became really important for us, as we'll go to see, because Jake opened Tor Beers. So Jake has a bar now, which is inside the Golden Lion. So if you go into the Golden Lion, turn right, round the corner, Tor Beers, over 120 specialist craft ales, and you can drink in the pub, and we're onto a really good thing there. And here's some pictures from the pub. This is Jake in the pub. That's Gig in the middle, birthday party. That's my dog again. That's my hairdresser, Holly. Holly did a charity hairdressing event there. So we're just trying to mix it up about what we can do in this space. We're really grateful to Gig to let us have that. You can buy a beer in our bar or her bar and drink it anywhere. So it's a beautiful community there. More pictures. Jarvis Cocker came, mate. Had to put that one in. But yeah, there's some examples of some just pictures of gigs we put on in the space. And yeah, some of the things, we continue to use the pub for other stuff. Tape DJing, top left. Michael Chapman, Sam and the Plants, so loads of cool things going on. Visit Todd. I continue to work with some other promoters in the area. This was with the Todmorden Folk Fest, who asked us to do like a weird folk stage every year. So this is a project we did with them. And then, because I like to do different new things, the Trades Club in Hebden Bridge asked me to curate this. So we created Experimental Yorkshire, and we got into trouble with some artists from the area who claimed that he'd invented the concept of psychedelic badger, and we were ripping him off with this picture. That's another story. That was a cool event, though. I really enjoyed that. Hang on, that's me on stage with my band, the So. We opened the gig. It was good. Then back in Tour Beers, very popular. Come have a drink sometime. Pete Fowler came, we did some DJing, that was lovely. We actually got Rick Tomlinson to do something for a change, which was very good. So yeah, first birthday party, what else have we done? Oh yeah, and then Jake got into that's me and Jake's like Rover's Return, but new. And Jake made this beer called Arizona Yeti collaboration. So we started to get into collaboration beers, which is giving us some vital funding to pay bands. So basically, sell beer, pay bands. Then I got a cat. His name's George, and I looked at his face. I thought, we're going to make you a star. And he appeared on the new festival. This was this year. No, it wasn't. It was last year, actually. And we got some funding from Sound of Music. Thanks, Harry Cooper, in the room over there, mate. And all the people in top are like, you've done all right for yourself. You've got Arts Council and all that. But they actually sponsored Sound of Music. We had to put them on anyway, just so you know. This is cool because we had more than one stage. This is the first time we did more than one stage. So that was great. And I invited people who are playing traditional music using traditional instruments from the European mainland to come and play in Todmorden as an anti-Brexit thing. So that was great show. I'm really aware of time. We did our obligatory NTS picture. We went to NTS Manchester Tour FM, so we stick that word in front of the things. So that was great. And then another beer. Dana's on this one. That's outside the Golden Lion. I'm just whizzing through. Some snapshots from the fest. Yeah, loved it. We actually got a pro photographer for this one. What else have we done this year? So yeah, Richard Dawson came. We raised about £1,000 for the RNIB, the blind charity. Can't remember those letters. But yeah, that was really great. It was great. It's always great to have Richard around. And Tour Invocation Band, another tour for you there. That's Jake's band. So what's next for us? This is the next gig we're doing. I actually made this poster, so that's a bit different. And Lucy Treach is coming. She's going to play the nickel harper, which is an amazing Swedish instrument. This is the last bit of Sound of Music funding we've got. It's going on this show. And she's going to lead a big jam up in Hebden. This lovely little place called the Fox and Goose. Okay, within 10 minutes, I was really trying there. So last thoughts. Visit Todmorden, visit Tour Beers, and drink craft. Thank you very much.
Cool, I'm just going to let this run because there's like 60 odd photos to go through. So yeah, it's me again. So yeah, I am here to talk about the last Outlands tour, which was the Enso Stone, which was a collaboration between Kujaku and Impa TV. How did it come about? It was just playing. There we go. Oh, hold on a second. Slideshow. There we go. Cool. So yeah, this came about when I became part of Outlands. We sort of put a proposal together for a tour. I think I came up with this idea at 3 a.m. in the back store of Islington Mill. Why is it stop playing? In the storeroom behind the bar at Islington Mill. And Impa TV are a video collective based at the Mill. Another Milton Keynes, or actually Isadora, as part of the Milton Keynes crew. Anyway, I was there, sort of there for the start of Impa TV, and they've documented a lot of the underground music scene. They've done a lot of sort of music videos and streaming live sort of sets from Supernormal and various other festivals. And they also do a lot of kind of big installation work. Kujaku are a kind of heavy psychedelic rock band from Hamamatsu in Japan. I'd booked them twice in Manchester, and they came over and they were super young. And I'm not a huge psych rock fan, but they kind of got quite an interesting take on it. There's kind of a very sort of delicate, beautiful ambience to their sound, and really they've got a really, really solid rhythm section. And they do something quite interesting with psych. And when Impa TV had seen them at Fat Out Fest they're really interested by them. Neither collective it was something new for both collectives and for myself. Kijaku never collaborated with visual artists. They didn't really have a visual element to their stage show. IMPTV had never designed a stage show for a band, let alone something that was tourable, and I'd never produced a tour before. So it was kind of something new and pushing us all creatively to sort of produce something that was new and exciting for us all. One of the projects I've run, which I spoke about earlier, is Summer Beta, and it's a residency programme specifically aimed at musicians. And through that, I've seen the kind of immense benefit of the residency as a tool for kind of producing new work, and more than that, deepening creative partnerships, and sort of developing personal relationships with each other, which I think is really important for collaborations to be successful. So yeah, giving this, like wanting to kind of bring these two collectives together that lived on opposite sides of the world, I really wanted to make sure that there was a residency that happened, ideally in both places, to enable that to kind of happen. So we weren't basically sort of putting together this tour through Skype and huge time differences and a really, really large language barrier. So this is where the beautiful Outlands lot came in. Sam and Pippa in particular helped in applying for funding from Saskawa and Daiwa foundations to enable us to go to Japan. That's something that was like, I'd never been to Japan, IMPTV had never been to Japan, never thought we would have the means to be able to go there. So again, kind of having the expertise of both Sam and Pippa, Buckfast, introducing the Japanese to Buckfast, having their expertise to enable us to put together these funding applications to enable our trip to Japan, and then also to be able to enable a residency for Kijaku in Salford, was completely paramount to the success of the tour. And yeah, we're really, really grateful. So massive thanks to Outlands, in particular Sam Piff, for making that happen. So yeah, without securing this funding, it would have all come together through Skype and email, which when we got out there and realised there was a huge, huge language barrier, like it would have been sort of near impossible to kind of get the deep sort of collaboration and also kind of the sharing of the concept. So it didn't just come from IMPTV or Kijaku, it was massively together, and actually kind of being in their hometown and going to Hamamatsu and seeing they also run a venue, seeing where they came from, learning about their culture and just bonding really, and nothing bonds you more than sake and karaoke, I'll tell you that. Seeing where they were from and like sort of body language and being able to kind of speak in person was how we kind of communicated a lot of ideas and showing kind of sharing visual elements of it as well, because language wasn't something that we could communicate with. So yes, during our time in Japan as well, so we went to Tokyo, we went to Osaka and Kyoto as well, and during our time in Tokyo, we went to a place called Paradise Air, which is another residency space, and that I'll talk about that a bit later on. But that's something that we're continuing a partnership with. But also from IMPTV side, they did a huge amount of filming during our time in Japan, and that produced a visual content that ended up as part of the visual element to the final project. So talk about the concept of Enso Sewn. So Enso is a Japanese circular symbol, hand-drawn in 1 or 2 inhibited brushstrokes to express a moment where the mind is free and let the body create, and sewn is a unit of loudness. IMPTV were really interested in how sound can trigger light, and how they could take the rhythmic ambience of Kijaku's music and represent it visually. So that again, during their time in Hamamatsu, we all sat round in a restaurant and in their venue, and were kind of sharing sort of visual elements of what they like, and they introduced IMPTV to Enso. So again, that kind of fed into the overall concept, which I don't think would have come without us being able to go to Japan and kind of see and understand and a deeper understanding of their culture. And I think kind of, especially when working with artists from different cultures, I think it's really important that they have an understanding and have visited those places, because kind of, reading about Japan and visiting it were just completely different things. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful that we were able to go on that trip. Right, done that bit. So the development so after the Japan trip, IMPTV then locked themselves in a warehouse in Salford for sort of many months, and sort of developing the concepts again through Facebook group with with Kijaku, then we're sort of sharing visual thoughts to it, and then also Kijaku shared like their music and what their set was going to be, so they could program all the visuals to kind of fit in with the music. They build this big circle, which is the sort of representing the Enso circle, and then the kind of main focus of the visuals was on that screen, and then there was 4 different screens that kind of went either side of it. Now, the really good thing about the Outlands tour was that each venue was so different. So we took it to spaces like the Delors Pavilion was this like huge, massive theatre, and then to Fuse, which is really, really useful in kind of thinking about the future of this project, because we know that it can work. We know what venue it's perfect, like ideally in, but we know it can kind of work in smaller venues or on larger scales. So that was super useful, and kind of, as like similar to a static material, kind of making it work in each space, and also all kind of coming together each night, and and sort of working together to build it and make it work within each set. Really kind of sort of tighten the bond, and we were a right little crew by the end of it, and really, really slick. And it was like, it was a really kind of good sort of experience that we're all of it doing together. So future plans for it. So I spoke before about the Paradise Air connection. So the reason we went for a meeting at Paradise Air, and that was brought up because Kijaku's manager introduced us to them. So we're actually in talks with them. They do a series of residencies over there, not only just for artists, but for producers and curators, which I was like, sweet. Like, artists always go on these amazing residencies that we facilitate, and actually kind of giving curators and producers that time to sort of think about either their business model or future plans or work and funding applications, I thought was really important. And maybe that is something that we should support, because the people at the top that are kind of feeding down to the artists maybe are the ones that are kind of doing a lot of like the kind of laborious, very sort of admin-based work, and kind of giving them this space to be able to sort of think for themselves, I think is really important. So we're working at the moment with Metal, who are another residency space over in Liverpool, to kind of deliver this project and kind of establish this partnership between Islington Mill, Metal and Paradise Air to kind of offer artists an artist residency per year and a curator residency. We're in the talks of doing that, and hopefully that's going to come through at some point this year. And then the future plans for Enso Stone. So we are going to be touring it around Europe in November. So we're speaking to hopefully taking it to the Guess Who and Fat Out Fest are kind of conveniently about 10 days apart. So we're going to bring it back over in October for Fat Out Fest, and then take it on the road and into Europe, because Kijaku have actually played a lot more over in Europe than they have in the UK. It's super exciting. It's continual development, and we've sort of like all fallen in love with each other a little bit, and the end of the tour was incredibly emotional. And but we're sort of really keen to kind of push it and continue. And I think for me, like initially, we were going to work with another band on this, and actually working with Kijaku at the beginning of their career, and kind of they're super young and really enthusiastic. And that was like far more exciting, actually delivering it, working with artists that were like super keen into the idea, and kind of really, really excited about sort of pushing themselves creatively. Cool. Yeah.
Sorry, it's me again. We are a network. It saves money if we get involved on things like this, and so it's me again. I'll be quick. Sorry. Okay, so I want to talk about Fracture Patterns, which is a show I produced for Outlands with the artists Earth Eater and Semiconductor. I want to use this section to move away from the technical side of producing the tour and focus more on the conceptual side. If you like, I want to think more from the creative side of the phrase creative producer in this little bit. I want to talk about the ideas behind the work. Obviously, the artists take credit for the piece, but sometimes you can dismiss the kind of conceptual groundwork that happens in collaboration between the producer and the artists at the outset of the work, especially when it's two artists that haven't worked together before. So just to give you some background on the thinking behind Fracture Patterns, really. So Fracture Patterns is essentially about, although about's a funny way of putting it, about noise. And through my own sort of research and my own art practice, I'm interested in this notion of noise. And this was touched on by kind of John and some of the Q&As last night. So noise is a kind of contentious issue already in experimental music. Interests me. So there's a rich culture of noise making in experimental music, from the so-called Western canon of sound art and the like of the Italian futurists and, you know, John Cage, and more recent developments from in the genre of noise like Japanoise, with the obvious go-to artists like Merzbow. But like there's this alternative and less recognised canon of noise artists, you know, and Fielding talked about this alternative canon, I think, earlier, you know, starting with people like Sun Ra, or not starting with, but including people like Sun Ra. And like a contemporary reference, there's contemporary noise work that moves away from the kind of maybe tired masculine tropes associated with noise music. You know, I'm talking about, although there's definitely a kind of force in both of these eyes, the amazing kind of recent noise work from like Pharmacon and More Mother, who are really pushing noise into some amazing spaces. So, and even beyond these designations, noise is in fact one of the alternative labels we sometimes give the whole scene of improvised music and experimental music, you know, noise nights. And this designation, I think, is key because it kind of groups this cultural territory as some kind of outside, and it's kind of paradoxically, noise is a name that we give something we can't name. And so this kind of starts to explain how noise, and here I mean the notion of noise itself, has spilled out into areas beyond music and even beyond the sonic. I've begun to see noise as a way of thinking through and engaging in this modern hyper-network reality in a digital world that we could say moves in excess of the capacity of human perception. I'm thinking about the way the internet seems to ever increasingly throw information at us through ever-increasing channels of communication, and the often confusing and mutating array of opinion and pressures we now need to navigate as part of that life. So I started to begin to think about this duality between the sonic and the musical engagement in noise and this other larger understanding. And the question became something like, how is it that these artworks are enjoyable, like often sublime, often precisely in the way that they take ourselves out of ourselves to a place beyond the human? And in the sphere of internet culture and media saturated, politically unstable modern reality, how do we engage with this noise in that way? And are there like, you know, ways to transit between the two of those things, or could one inform the way we deal with the other? So to get back to fracture patterns, how can we explore noise away from the transgressive and masculinized tradition of noise music and start to think and experience this larger notion, perhaps as a space of enjoyment or invention? So I'm just going to show you the video now before I finish. Okay, Cool, yeah. Wait, I'll let that one happen, yeah. So as you've seen from the video, like Outlands afforded this possibility of colliding two like different art practices that for me deal in noise. So yeah, from the like sublime digital investigations of semiconductor that use sonic noise, but in conversation with visual noise, sublime visual noise. And Earth Eater is an artist who has a history of sonic engagement with noise, but uses it in other ways. I kind of see Earth Eater in a very persona as a kind of almost constructed amalgam of styles and cultural references, and she kind of becomes an alien presence, like a noise within the context of popular culture. So I was really intrigued to put these two things together. So to conclude, this production was about the collision between two engagements of noise that escaped the sonic. It was truly about the experiment, in the most traditional understanding of that word, the experiment of bringing them together with the catalyst of producing this tour, colliding their practices and seeing what emerges. And what emerges is precisely like the fracture patterns that are emitted from that process. So to put it in the context of Outlands, and indeed in the wider context of experimental music itself, this production wanted to explore the fracture patterns that this work and work like it can create in the very culture it inhabits. Okay, thanks.